Hi, Joyce at Delightful Quilting and Sewing, a Nolting dealer in Avon, New York. Yesterday, I showed you the correct method or the best method for installing your Quiltmagine system, how to hook it up, how to place the box on the back, and all of the little things that are important. One of the things about computer-guided quilting, and this is common between every kind of robotic system there is out there, is that every system has to hook into two features on the machine. It has to hook into your single stitch feature and into your on-off feature, because in the program it's going to tell the machine to, once you've gotten this going, once you press sew, it will tell the machine to take a single stitch if that's what you selected for knotting stitch. And it will also, when you press sew, once it goes from that, it will turn the machine on. So every system out there has to do that. In order to do that, it has to hook into the electronics of the machine. And as I mentioned yesterday on the Pro, it hooks into the electronics in the circuit board and the front in the head here, and in the Fun Quilter, as I showed you yesterday, it hooks into, and also the CLX, it hooks into the plugs that are underneath the back handles, the single stitch and the on-off plug in the back. Now, when things go wrong with our system, we automatically start blaming different ones. We say, oh, it's the software. There's something wrong with the software, or there's something wrong with the machine. In reality, it could be a number of factors. Yes, indeed, it could be the software, or it could be a problem with the machine, or it could be a problem with the operator. So when we're talking about a system like this, where we have software and our tablet, and we have our machine connections like we do back there, and underneath our system we have more connections like we looked at yesterday in the motor plate that's underneath the carriage. We have a lot of factors here that are involved in making our system actually sew. So to automatically start blaming the software or whatever we're doing, we shouldn't be doing that. We need to look and see where and what is going on. Recently, I've fielded a number of calls from some of you on tracing issues. And when you press the sew button up here on the screen, instead of it starting to sew, and this is after it takes a single stitch, when it's supposed to be sewing, it is tracing. Now, you didn't tap on the trace button, you didn't intend it to trace, you wanted it to sew, but it's not sewing. So here's some things to look for so that we can weed out what the real issue is. Automatically we think software issue because obviously Quiltmagine isn't doing what it's supposed to, so it must be software. But in reality, it probably is not. One of the things that you need to look at is, and I've noticed this because I had this happen to me, I'm working on some experimental connections to make our installation a little bit easier here, and it did indeed trace on me the other day. What I noticed was that my run light, my green run light, did not come on. I tapped on sew, it took my knotting stitches, and then I heard kind of a little sound like it tried to start the machine, but it didn't happen. And all of a sudden my machine is tracing around like this, following the pattern, and it is not running. And when I looked at it carefully, the run light was not on. Good indication that the machine was never turned on. When your machine is turned on, the run light will be green, definitely green. So then what I did was I pressed on the stop button up here on my screen. And what I noticed was, lo and behold, my run light came on. So as I was trying to turn it off, the switch did work, and because the machine was already off, it turned it on. Now, if at that point I had started to move my machine because it's in stitch regulated mode, it would be stitching and I would be stitching over stuff I didn't want it to stitch on. So I decided to let it just sit for a minute. I knew that in 8 seconds, because it wasn't being moved, it would automatically turn off, and it did. And then I was able to release the carriage and bring it back and restart it the next time it worked for me. So this is a clear indication of a connection issue. It has nothing to do with the software. The software is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's initiating the single stitch. It's initiating the machine to turn on. The problem was when Quiltmagine said turn on, there was a connection issue and it didn't turn on. What I found recently is that in the Pro, although there could be many places, it could be a connection issue. More than likely, it is in the head. Over time, the little wires that are in the circuit board loosen up a little bit, and they're not making a good connection. And this was the solution to one of the individuals that I talked with. So let's talk for a second about where the problem could be. So in a Pro, it could be here in the head. And that seems to be the problem, and I think it's the problem that I am having with this as I'm working on some experimental connections with the Pro. Another place it could be, right up here. It could be your USB. If it's not in there firmly enough, then the message is not going to get to the machine. Now, that might give a different scenario, a different situation other than trace, but nevertheless, it's not going to work correctly if it doesn't get the message. So that's another place to look. One of the things I always tell people is check the connections, every single connection. Another connection is right here. Now, because the red and black is my on-off, this would be the first place I would look if it's tracing. Is that in there? And I have, over the years, replaced on some of our customers this little black box. Once it was replaced, the problem went away. So this can be a faulty part of the whole thing. This can fail, and replacing it might be the solution. The other thing that we talked about yesterday had to do with this right down here, our Ethernet cord. What kind of connection is in there? Because this is where the message goes from here down into the motor plate and tells it to drive. So depending on where the problem is, you might get a different kind of issue with your system. So take a good look at your machine when this happens. All of a sudden it's happening and we throw our hands in the air and go like, oh, what's going on here? And we don't even observe what's going on. Another issue is that you might actually see the red fail light come on. This is an indication that there is actually no message getting through at all, or that the machine is coming on and intermittently turning off again, on and off. So look at the lights. See what the lights are telling you. One of the tests that you can do to make sure it's a connection issue is if you start your system and you bring it over to where you're going to pull up your bobbin, you pull up your bobbin and you press start. And if it takes the single stitch and then starts to trace, press your on-off button on your machine right here so that it actually starts the machine running. And if it continues to sew just fine, then you know for sure it is a connection issue. And then you just have to dive deeper and find out where the connection problem really lies. On the Fun Quilter, same kind of thing. Again, you're going to look for a connection issue. Although I don't have this Fun Quilter set up right now, I would be looking at the connections underneath the handlebars in the back. I would be looking again at that black box and making sure that my wires are connected into that black box firmly. One other person that I worked with that had a problem, and I don't exactly remember what the symptoms of it were, but it boiled down to the fact that the Ethernet cord was old and worn, and it was not having a good connection into either the black box or down here into the motor plate. And once that was replaced, then that problem that she had went away as well. So don't automatically assume it's the software and go ahead and call Grace. Do a little diagnostic work yourself and see if you can't determine what the real issue is. Once you know what the real issue is, then you've got a good chance of solving the problem. Well, that's it for tonight with this. I'm not going to call it Tech Tuesday, you know, a terrific Wednesday maybe. A little help in for you in trying to solve some of the issues that you may have, or an issue that you might have with your Quiltmagine system when it decides to trace and you didn't press the trace button. Have a great evening. Until next time, this is Joyce.